Okay, coming up in the near future, there is a quiz called Acceleration, and sometime after that, there's another quiz called Kinetic Energy, and both of these quizzes are hidden from your view initially. You can't see either of these quizzes until you prove that you can handle a little bit of math by passing the Manipulate an Equation quiz, and that quiz is coming up fairly soon. So where is this coming from? Why is this happening? The reason why is because the state of Michigan, I did a search on the curriculum page that I use. I did a search for acceleration, and I got right here. P2.2b says use the change of speed and elapsed time to calculate the average acceleration. So the acceleration equation looks like this. It's got this kind of a form. A equals B minus C over D. And the other one I wanted to talk about today with you guys was for kinetic energy. And kinetic energy, here it's P4.3E is one of them. It says calculate the changes in kinetic and potential energy. So the kinetic energy equation has this kind of a form. A equals B times C squared over 2. So before you can see these quizzes, before you can try these quizzes, you need to prove that you can handle them by passing this quiz, Manipulate an Equation. So what I did to get started was I found this website called Algebra Help, and I typed in order of operations, and it gave me this, and it told me what I need to do in what order. So I'm going to jot this list down on my notes here to help me out. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so rule 1 was do parentheses and brackets first. Rule 2 was take care of any exponent type stuff. Rule 3 was take care of multiplication and division. And then lastly, we do addition and subtraction. Okay, so I think that if I gave students a quiz and I gave them B and C and D, like if I said B was, I don't know, 6 and C was 10 and D was 2, I think that most kids would be like, okay, 6 minus 10 is negative 4. They'd say, all right, A was negative 2. I think most kids can probably handle that okay. But I suspect that if I gave you A and B and D and said find C, get C by itself, I suspect that maybe some kids would have a hard time. So that's the main reason why I'm doing this video with you. So if we want C by itself, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to look at our rule thing up here that I got from that website. There's no parentheses or brackets. There's no squareds or square roots or anything, but there is some division. So we've got to take care of this step first and then step 4. So I'll do those in a different color here. How about this? So I've got to worry about these for this problem. So if I want C by itself, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of this division. And the opposite of division is multiplication. So if I've got a divided D, I want to get rid of that divided D. So I need to multiply this side by D. If you want to write D over 1 to help remind you that this D is on top, you can. I don't usually do that, but you can. So if you multiply this side by D, it cancels out. But whatever you do to one side, you got to do to both. So what I've done so far is I've gotten dA equals B minus C. So I'm on my way to getting C by itself. But the next thing I'm noticing here is that I've got this positive B. I don't want a B here. I just want C by itself. So to get rid of a positive B, I'm going to subtract B from both sides. So what I wind up with then is this. The B's go away, so I have got negative C equals dA minus B. So I'd really prefer not to have the opposite of C. I wanted C. So if I multiply everything by negative 1, basically what I'm doing is I'm switching the signs of everything. So what I end up with for my final answer, my final equation is this becomes positive, that becomes positive, this becomes negative. So I'm going to write it like this. I'm going to write C equals B minus dA. Okay, I suppose I could have written it just like this. I could have written C equals negative dA plus B, but I think I like this way better. So anyway, so if you could do this, then you would be okay on the Manipulate an Equation and the acceleration quiz. So let's move onward to the next equation for kinetic energy. What if I wanted to get C by itself in this one? Well, that would take a little bit of work too. I've got some stuff I've got to do. So let's do it. The first thing I'm noticing here is that I have no parentheses or brackets, so I don't have to worry about this. I do have a squared, but that's what I'm trying to get by itself, so that's what I'm going to have to worry about last. And I've also got some multiplication and division going on. And I don't see any addition or subtraction here that I'm going to have to do. So let's get started. I want to get rid of, I've got a divided 2. So what I need to do is I need to multiply this side by 2. Or you could say 2 over 1 if you wanted to. But when I multiply this side by 2, it cancels out. And you know that if you do it to one side, you've got to do it to both. So 2a equals bc squared. Now I'm getting closer to getting c by itself, but I've still got this multiplied b on this side. So to get rid of a multiplied b, I'm going to divide this side by b, and that's going to cancel it out. But since I did it to the right side, I've got to do it to the left side. So what I wind up with, I'm almost done, is c squared equals 2a over b. So how do I get c by itself when it's c squared? Well, I'm hoping that you guys, I'll give you a quick review here. Let's do the number 4. 4 is 2 times 2. So that means 2 squared is 4. What's the opposite of squared? Well, the opposite of squared is square root. So if I take the square root of 4, I get 2. Why? Because 2 times 2 is 4. So hopefully that's a review from a long time ago for you. So anyway, going back to my equation here, if I want c by itself, I need to get rid of that squared, so I'm going to take the square root of this side, and that's just going to give me c. But whatever you do to one side, you've got to do to both. So I wind up with c equals the square root, and there's nothing to simplify inside there, 2a over b. So c equals the square root of 2a over b. So what if I actually gave you some numbers here? What if I said a was 3 and b was 5? Then what I would do is I would write my equation. I'd fill in those numbers. A is 3 and b is 5. And I would have 2 times 3 on the top. So I'd have the square root of 6/5. So I actually want a decimal answer, a real number that I could work with. So I'm going to do that on my calculator. I'm going to go, make sure I hit clear here. I'm going to go 6 divided by 5, and I get 1.2, okay? But that's not my answer. My answer is the square root of 1.2. So I've got my 1.2. I'm just going to hit the square root button, and I get, I'm going to round this. I'm going to call this I'm going to call it 1.1. So in this case, c is going to equal 1.1. And once again, if you can do this, if you can get the different variables by themselves, you will do okay on the kinetic energy quiz and the manipulate an equation quiz that's coming up fairly soon.